Today, we'll be recapping the movie Speak No Evil. Sit tight and enjoy. The film opens with a car driving through the night, carrying a young boy and his parent. The couple exits the car, holding hands, setting an intriguing and mysterious tone. We are introduced to a picturesque family of three: Ben Dalton, his wife Louise, and their daughter Agnes. Agnes sits by the pool, complaining about something unclear, with her favorite toy, Hoppy, by her side. A man named Patty walks in and asks if a nearby chair is free. Ben politely says it is, and Patty takes the chair to his umbrella. Patty, appearing cheerful and carefree, soon jumps into the pool, reinforcing the image of a happy, charismatic individual. In the next scene, Ben and Louise walk with Agnes along the road when she realizes Hoppy is missing. Panic sets in as she demands her toy back. Louise reassures her while urging Ben to look for it. With visible concern, Ben searches for Hoppy. During his search, he spots Patty riding a motorcycle with his own family. Returning to Louise and Agnes, Ben learns that Hoppy has been found. The two families introduce themselves. Patty's wife is Kiara, and their son is Ant, who struggles with speaking. Agnes, fascinated by Patty's motorcycle, asks for a ride. After some convincing, Ben reluctantly agrees. Agnes enjoys the ride, and Patty invites Ben's family to join them for lunch. During lunch, Ben shares how he and Louise prefer living in London. Patty opens up about Ant's inability to speak due to a medical condition. He was born with a shorter tongue. The conversation reveals that Ben is currently unemployed, while Patty is a doctor. As time passes, the two families grow closer and share moments of genuine camaraderie. Back in London, Ben and his family return to their mundane lives. One evening, Ben says goodnight to Agnes and reminds her of their agreement. She's old enough to sleep without Hoppy. At nearly 12, he feels she should let go of her attachment to the toy. However, Louise advises him to be more understanding. She then shows Ben an invitation from Patty to spend a week with them. After some deliberation, the couple decides to accept. In the next scene, after a long drive, they arrive at Patty's home, an old but charming building. Patty and his family warmly welcome them. Over drinks, Patty presents a meal and insists Louise try a piece of meat. Initially hesitant, Louise takes a bite but discreetly spits it out when no one is looking. Later, Ben, while taking out the trash, encounters Ant, who appears to want to communicate something urgent. However, Patty interrupts before Ben can understand. As night falls, Ben and Louise prepare for bed. Louise notices a stain on the mattress and complains about its cleanliness, but Ben dismisses it as old and harmless. She reluctantly brushes it off, and the two settle in. Ben expresses his gratitude for Louise's effort in agreeing to the trip, and the mood turns intimate. However, their moment is interrupted by Agnes, who complains she can't sleep and insists on joining them in bed. Ben's frustration is evident, and his dissatisfaction with his life and marriage becomes palpable. He goes to bed with despair etched on his face. The next day, the two families spend quality time together, enjoying a scenic walk and braving a dip in the cold water. During the swim, Ant struggles and begins to drown, unable to swim properly. Louise grows increasingly uncomfortable with the situation and tells Ben they should leave, suggesting her aching neck as an excuse. As they discuss this, Kira interrupts, inviting them to a private dinner outing, exclusively for the parents. Although hesitant at first, Ben and Louise eventually agree after some persuasion from Sierra. At dinner, the atmosphere starts off lighthearted, but a debate arises between Louise and Patty. Louise, a vegetarian, is questioned by Patty about her choice to eat fish. Ben steps in to diffuse the tension, remarking that it's complicated. The chef then arrives with fresh meat, and Patty jokes with him, eliciting laughter from everyone at the table. Meanwhile, back at the house, Ant and Agnes sneak into a room. Ant shows Agnes a collection of watches and picks one out, seemingly wanting to share something with her. Before he can, the nanny starts searching for them. The two children quickly sneak out to avoid being caught. Back at dinner, Patty starts talking about his intimate life with Kiara, claiming they spend time together every day. Louise jokes that Ben is lucky if it happens once a month. Kiara, taking things further, begins to explain and even demonstrate how they keep the spark alive. The scene becomes awkward, with music playing in the background as Patty and Kiara leave the dance floor for a private moment. At the end of the dinner, Patty makes a remark about the bill, then hands it to Ben to pay, before walking off to fetch the car. Ben and Louise are left sitting, visibly uneasy and dejected. Later at the house, Ant silences Agnes by covering her mouth and then reveals bruises on his body, evidence of abuse inflicted by Patty. Before he can show more, a knock on the door prompts him to jump into bed, pretending to be asleep. Kiara and Louise check on them and, finding them asleep, remark on how adorable they look. Later that night, Patty notices his watch collection and realizes one has shifted slightly out of place, but he dismisses it. Tensions rise between Ben and Louise when she makes a joke that Ben finds upsetting. He lashes out, accusing her of betraying him, and a heated argument ensues. Louise counters by expressing her frustration with the sacrifices she's made for him, leaving her job and home to move to London, only to face an angry and ungrateful husband. After an emotional exchange, They reconcile with a heartfelt hug, both apologizing to each other. In the middle of the night, Louise wakes up to check on Agnes, only to find her missing from her bed. She searches the house and discovers Agnes sleeping in Patty and Kiara's room. Panicked, Louise quietly retrieves her daughter and wakes Ben, insisting they leave immediately. They hurriedly pack their belongings and drive away. As they depart, Aunt watches them from the window. While on the road, Agnes realizes Hoppy is missing and begins to panic. Ben pulls over to search the trunk but can't find it. Agnes grows hysterical, kicking the seat and hurting herself. Distracted, Ben yells at her and takes his eyes off the road, narrowly avoiding a collision with an oncoming truck. The family is shaken, fear etched across their faces. Determined to retrieve Hoppy, Ben decides to turn back to Patty's house. Upon arrival, he asks Louise to wait in the car while he goes inside. After some time, Louise grows concerned and decides to follow him. She finds Ben trying to convince Patty that they need to leave, offering vague excuses. However, Patty and Kiara press them for honesty. Frustrated, Louise finally blurts out the truth, accusing them of crossing a line by allowing Agnes to sleep in their bed. Kiara apologizes and explains that they once had a daughter who tragically died of cot death. She claims that Agnes had been awake the previous night, crying and scratching herself while calling out for her parents, who weren't there. Kiara says she only took Agnes into their bed to comfort her, not intending to offend. Just then, Agnes enters the room, holding Hoppy and announcing she's found it. With the tension easing, Ben and Louise decide to stay, seemingly reconciled with Patty and Kiara. In the next scene, Aunt attempts to write something on a piece of paper, but Agnes struggles to read it because Aunt's handwriting is nearly illegible. Frustrated, Aunt tries to mime his message to her. However, before he can communicate further, Kiara notices. Sensing trouble, Aunt quickly stuffs the note into his mouth and pretends everything is normal. Agnes later approaches her mother, Louise, expressing concern about Aunt. She insists something isn't right and that he's trying to tell her something important. However, Louise, unable to make sense of Agnes's worries, dismisses them. Just then, Kiara appears and interrupts, cheerfully asking Agnes to help peel some fruit. Meanwhile, Patty pulls Ben aside, saying he overheard the argument between him and Louise the other night. He empathizes with Ben, acknowledging how painful it is to feel betrayed. Offering advice, Patty suggests a therapeutic exercise and takes Ben to a nearby hillside, where they both scream out their frustration. In the next scene, while Patty is sleeping, Aunt stealthily steals a key from Patty's back pocket. Holding a ball, he approaches Agnes, tossing it to her and encouraging her to play along. He deliberately throws the ball far off, leading her to a secluded area. He unlocks a hidden bunker and sneaks Agnes inside. Turning on the light, they discover an eerie collection of bags, luggage, and shoes belonging to both children and adults. Aunt retrieves a book filled with photographs of various families, including ones featuring Patty smiling alongside them. As Aunt flips through the pages, he desperately tries to explain something to Agnes. Still unable to understand, she watches as he turns to the final page, which shows a man wearing a watch. Aunt points to the photo, indicating that the man is his real father. Aunt gestures toward his tongue in the photograph, then opens his mouth and mimics a cutting motion with scissors. Horrified, Agnes realizes Patty cut Aunt's tongue. Aunt points to a picture of Agnes and her family in the book, signaling that they are the next targets and that Agnes is the next child in line. Panicking, Agnes tries to remain calm as Aunt urges her to stay silent. He asks her to take pictures of the evidence before they leave. Once finished, Aunt carefully closes the bunker and ensures it looks undisturbed. He returns the key to Patty's room, where he finds Patty awake. Shock and fear flash across Aunt's face, but he hides the key behind his back. Sensing something unusual, Patty asks Aunt for a hug. Aunt leans in, complying. And as he moves to leave, Patty demands a piggyback ride. Seizing the opportunity, Aunt quickly slips the key back into its original spot before they head outside together. Meanwhile, Agnes pricks herself with a thorny leaf, pretending she has started her period. She uses this as an excuse to talk privately with her mother. Once they're alone, Agnes reveals everything she saw in the bunker. Overwhelmed with shock, Louise tells Agnes to remain calm, stay inside, and be brave. Outside, Patty, Ben, and Aunt are playing football. Ben throws the ball too hard, and it lands near the bunker. Patty retrieves it, but notices signs that the bunker has been disturbed. Suspicion clouds his face as he inspects the area. Louise emerges from the house and, sensing tension, asks if something is wrong. Patty brushes it off, but Louise uses the moment to call Ben inside, saying Agnes needs his attention. Inside, Agnes shows Ben the photographs from the bunker, confirming her story. Meanwhile, Louise searches the house for a sharp object to defend herself, just in case. When Ben and Louise rejoin Patty and Kiara, they announce their decision to leave. Their excuses are polite but thin, with Ben expressing gratitude for the time spent together and describing it as a refreshing break. Patty smiles, but his expression barely conceals the anger simmering beneath. As the group prepares to leave, they find the car's tire flat. An awkward tension fills the air. Despite this, Ben insists on driving with the flat, but Patty stops it, pointing out the risk. When Ben asks for a phone to call the AA, Patty refuses and suggests they fix it themselves. Reluctantly, Ben agrees, and they gather tools to repair the tire. Once done, Patty looks at Agnes and asks, "Are you absolutely sure you've got everything you need?" His gaze is unnerved. Agnes glances upward and notices her stuffed toy, Hoppy, stuck on the roof. Patty fetches a ladder and insists Ben retrieve it, claiming Ben's height and longer arms make him the better choice. Hesitant but left with no option, Ben climbs the ladder, nearly falling several times. He finally retrieves Hoppy, only to discover it's torn. Patty apologizes nonchalantly, suggesting an animal may have gotten to it. As they leave, Patty says, "Text me when you get to London." Louise responds, "Sure," but Patty presses further, his tone accusatory. "You're still not being honest, are you?" His hand moves behind his back, as though concealing a weapon. Feeling cornered, Louise admits the truth. "We won't be texting, and we won't be inviting you to London. Ben and I won't be together anymore. I betrayed him, and while I've apologized, we can't move past it." Patty relaxes, appreciating her honesty, and lets them go. As they head for the gate, Ben asks Aunt to open it. Patty intervenes, using a remote to unlock it instead. As the family drives away, Patty shoves Aunt into the nearby lake, watching him struggle. Agnes screams in panic, prompting Ben to leap from the car. He orders Louise to drive, but jumps into the water to save Aunt. Before they can escape, Patty shuts the gate, trapping them. Ben pulls Aunt to shore as Patty fires a shot into the air, taking Louise and Agnes hostage. Inside the house, Patty ties them up and forces Louise to transfer their entire joint account balance of $252,454.71. Sierra, armed, keeps Ben and Aunt at gunpoint, while Patty prepares sedatives to inject them. However, Louise uses a sharp object she had hidden earlier to slash Patty across the face. The syringe falls, and Agnes secretly picks it up. Chaos ensues as Louise overpowers Kiara, wresting the gun from her. In the struggle, Louise locks Patty and Kiara in a room and escapes with her family to the car. As they attempt to drive away, Mike, another accomplice, appears and fires at them, forcing them to retreat back into the house. Desperate, Louise tries to call for emergency, but Kiara shut down the telephone line. Ben devises a plan to ignite a signal fire on the roof. However, as he throws the flaming bottle, Mike narrowly misses him with another shot. The bottle rolls off, failing to start a fire. Patty, enraged, forces his way into the house while Ciara sneaks in separately. Louise, armed with another sharp object, accidentally injures herself while hiding. Patty discovers her and tries to break down the door. In a desperate move, Louise stabs his hand. Patty retaliates with random gunfire, forcing her deeper into hiding. Meanwhile, Patty and Kiara begin taunting Aunt, who inadvertently coughed, revealing his location. Patty opens a wardrobe, but finds only Agnes's phone. Suddenly, Louise ambushes Patty, pouring acid she found earlier onto his face. Agnes and Aunt use the distraction to flee upstairs, but encounter Mike. Mike fires, only to realize he's aiming at a mirrored reflection. Ben attacks Mike, and a brutal fight ensues. Louise arrives and strikes Mike with a hammer, killing him. Ciara rushes to Patty's aid, dousing his burns with water. However, Patty orders her to find the children. On the rooftop, Kiara corners Agnes and Aunt, aiming a rifle at them. Before she can shoot, Louise shoves her off the roof, sending her to her death. Patty hears Kiara's scream and rushes to find her. Meanwhile, Agnes dangles precariously from the rooftop. Ben manages to pull her up, but notices the ladder has fallen. In a selfless act, he jumps down, injuring his leg. Despite the pain, he sets the ladder back up, allowing the others to climb down. As they near safety, Patty confronts them, pointing a gun at Agnes. He orders Ben to drop his weapon. Louise, in tears, pleads with Patty to kill her instead, offering herself to protect her children. As Patty prepares to fire, Agnes uses the sedative syringe from earlier to stab him. The drug takes effect, and Patty collapses unconscious. Ben approaches the fallen Patty, aiming his rifle at him, but deciding against pulling the trigger. As the family moves to leave, Aunt picks up a stone, fueled by rage and trauma, and repeatedly smashes Patty's head until it splits open. Screaming and crying, Aunt releases all his pent-up pain. The family finally escape, driving off into the night. Tears stream down their faces, especially Aunt, as they leave behind the nightmare they barely survived. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.